Hey guys, my name is Matsumo, and welcome to our episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. The first question for today comes from Jacob, and it is, do you think that flashbangs are useless in Rainbow Six Siege? Do you think that Ubisoft needs to rework them? Well, I wouldn't go as far to say that they're useless. I've lost games because I've gotten flashed, I've won games specifically because of this gadget, and while I will agree with you that they can be a bit more inconsistent compared to some of the other gadgets that you have available to you on offense, that doesn't make this thing completely obsolete. With that being said though, I wouldn't be opposed if Ubisoft did make some changes to it to make them a bit more reliable. I think that's the biggest issue I have with them right now. They're not as reliable as I would like them to be. And so if Ubisoft wanted to make some improvements to this gadget, I think one way they could go about it is by reducing the time it takes for the flash to go off. I'm sure you guys are aware of the mechanic right now where if the flashbang bounces off an object, it takes about a second after it makes the bounce for it to detonate. You can use this to your advantage. Now, the downside of it though is that a lot of the times, if you're going against someone who is halfway competent, they're listening for those audio cues. The sound of the flashbang bouncing off a wall is really obvious, and so as soon as someone hears that sound, they're gonna look in the opposite direction. You're not gonna be able to get the flash off because they're not even looking at it whatsoever. And so one way they could make this a bit more reliable is by shortening that time it takes for the flash effect to go off. The other way that they could go about it is by simply increasing the effective range. If you're able to get a flashbang directly next to someone's feet and then it goes off, it doesn't matter what direction they're looking at. As long as they're close enough, they're gonna be blinded. And so right now I think you need to be like 3 meters away for that to happen. Well, what if they bumped it up to like 5 or 6 meters? That might be a bit extreme, but you kind of get where I'm coming from. And then finally, and this might be the real solution, is just for them to go on in and make some bug fixes. I've had moments where I've tossed this gadget into a cubby where someone's hiding. There's no way they can run. It's within that 3 meters, so they should be guaranteed flashed. I charge on in, assuming that it's gonna be a free kill, and they're not flashed whatsoever, and they take me down. Now, it could have been user error because it's sometimes hard to know where it landed, but I think a lot of those moments, it's just because there's other objects that are blocking the line of sight of the flashbang. If there's a little book on the ground, now I don't know for certain, but if there's these small little objects that are slightly blocking the line of sight between it and the player, I have a feeling that it doesn't cause the blinding effect. And so maybe the simplest solution, or maybe not the simplest because it'd probably be hard to resolve these issues, but maybe the only thing that Ubisoft needs to do is not buff the gadget, but just make it more consistent so that these bugs don't occur. Like, that might be the best way of handling things. In general though, the real question is, does the community even think that this is necessary? Like I mentioned earlier, I don't think that this gadget is useless. It may be inconsistent, but in the right situations and in the right hands, it can absolutely win you games. And so let me know what you guys think about these suggestions. Do you think that the flashbang needs some improvements? How would you go about it? Do you think that it's in a good place right now? Let me know down below. The next question comes from the Lord Tachanka, and it is, what is your opinion on the map tower now that it's been out for a while? Personally, I don't like it very much. I don't like the way that you enter the building, plus it doesn't have very good flow to it. I dread playing on it every single time it pops up. That definitely seems to be the general consensus of the community right now, but admittedly, that's always been a critique when new DLC releases. You look back at even some of the fan favorite maps that came out, like Border and Skyscraper, for example, when they first released, a lot of people weren't really too excited with them because no one knows how to play on those maps. After a couple of months go by though, you start to learn the different strategies, you learn the meta, you know how to approach the objective, and then hey, it doesn't seem to be as bad, and then hey, now they're actually some of my favorite maps in the game. Tower though, while visually incredible, I love rappelling on the outside of the building like it's one of the coolest visually looking maps. Gameplay-wise, it's incredibly frustrating. I think one of the biggest issues that I have with Tower is that there are so many ways that the defensive team can hide and flank and catch you by surprise. Especially when you're playing on the southern section of the first floor, it's almost impossible to drone out every single part of that map to give you the confidence to push the objective. There's always that nagging feeling at the back of your brain that someone's gonna flank and surprise you, and usually that's exactly what happens. And while maybe we just need to adapt to the situation and always have someone watching our back, like maybe the meta and the thing that people need to realize is that you can't play this map like every other map in the game. You always have to have someone on your team watching that hallway for the flank, but that kind of sucks when you're like the last two people and you need to take out 3 or 4 people for the defensive team. It just seems heavily defensive favored. I feel like that really gets to the heart of the issue for why I don't like Tower. I just never feel safe on offense. If I'm playing on other maps like Oregon, for example, if I drone out the top floor, I take care of kitchen, the only thing I need to now worry about if defenders are down in the basement is the basement itself and the meeting room. I took the time to drone it out. We know that no defenders are there, or we took care of said defenders in those locations. Now we're good to go and we can manage the different angles. On Tower, it never feels like you can manage those angles. They could be coming from every single direction and you have no control. And so while I love the fact that Ubisoft took some risks with this map, it's very unique. I love the aesthetic, like visually it's stunning, but gameplay-wise, it does leave a lot to be desired. I'm hopeful in the next couple of months, I'll learn the meta and the different strategies and it'll become one of my favorite maps, but I would be very surprised if that happened simply because of its very design. The next question comes from Boogeyman, and it is, what are your thoughts on rank stats resetting when season resets so that you can see how well you do or don't do each season? I'm constantly getting messages because I hit plat, but my KD is 0.8, and people say I'm carried and stuff, and I know KD doesn't matter, but I'm tired of getting these messages. I really like this idea. I wish Ubisoft would spend a little bit more time to give us these detailed stats because I think a lot of people would find this information valuable. Now, you can go to your individual operator selection screen and find some detailed stats. Like if you want to see your win-loss ratio as Doc specifically, that's in the game right now. And those are great, but it's hard to know if you're making any improvement with those operators. For example, when Buck first came out, I was terrible with him, and to be honest, I'm still pretty bad, but I've made some improvements. Well, if you went to my stat page, it doesn't show that I've made those improvements. The stats across the board just look abysmal. My win-loss is down with him, my KD isn't great, and that's because when he first released, I played a lot of him, but I did horrifically. It would be nice if I now know, oh hey, I am making some improvements. I can go to each season, see this season I had this win-loss or this KD, the next season I had these better stats. Hey look, my headshot ratio improved. I'm getting a little bit better. Even if it was just on, a grand scale, maybe not individual operators, but it was just your overall stats in general. Hey, season 1, I had this win-loss. Season 2, I had this KD. I think that would be a great improvement to our overall stat progression. Now, I know that some people will just say you should go to a website to find all these details, but I don't think that should be necessary. I shouldn't have to go to a third-party website to find this information. I think it should just be at our fingertips in game. Like, I don't feel like that's completely unreasonable. And so in general, I really like this idea. The last thing I do want to mention though is I would recommend just ignoring those comments if you can. It sounds like the players that are sending you these messages are toxic to begin with. A toxic player is always going to find some excuse for why they're losing. Of course, it's never their issue, it's always their teammates. And so the low-hanging fruit, of course, is your KD, but they would find any other reason, even if your KD was really high. Like, if you don't do well that round, they're going to make some sort of excuse. And so while I know it sucks, it's hard to ignore them sometimes, that would be my main advice until Ubisoft does make some improvements, or even if they make any improvements to that stat progression. The next question is, do you think that Siege needs more of an incentive to play the objective? The game seems kill-based now. Well, I'm not really sure how else they would be able to incentivize that kind of gameplay. You could maybe give more points for playing the objective, but a lot of times the reason why people are going for kills isn't because they want more points, is because they want to see, their KD rise. That's the reason why they do it. They find that to be the fun part of Siege. And so increasing the points wouldn't do anything. Maybe they could make it so that the diffuser doesn't take as long to plant, or that it doesn't take as long for the diffuser to do its job. That could be another way to to make it more appealing. The thing about that, though, is that that could heavily imbalance the difference between offense and defense. If it is that much easier to plant the diffuser, offense is going to win more frequently. And I think right now, while it's not a perfect, 50-50 split between offense and defense with their win-loss, it's pretty close. That would have a dramatic impact on those stats. And so I'm not really sure how Ubisoft could go about this in a meaningful, impactful way without upsetting the balance of the game in general. On top of that, it's not just offense who's not playing the objective a lot of time, it's defense who are the ones that are running around like crazy. Especially at higher ranks, a lot of times offense isn't even able to get into the building because defense is peeking every single window, they're constantly running out, and as soon as someone steps inside, the round's already over. How in the world do you get defense to play the objective more than they already are? And so while I do see where you're coming from, it can be very frustrating for the game to not revolve around that teamwork and trying to play the objective, but I just don't really see how Ubisoft would be able to promote that kind of gameplay without anything really dramatic. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's episode of Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about what we discussed in today's video. Do you like the idea of making some changes to the flashbangs? Do you think that's a horrible idea? Let me know down below in the comments. As always, if you would like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can also leave a comment or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.